The words slipped out of her before she could stop them. Don't look at me like that. Clara Mayfield stood just inside the barn, sunlight breaking around her shoulders, dust floating like pale sparks in the air. She had one hand braced against the rough wooden post, the other clenched tight around the strap of her satchel. Her eyes lifted, sharp and wary, locking onto Elias Crow's face. He hadn't meant to stare. At least, that was what he told himself in the half-second before he realized he hadn't blinked in far too long. I ain't, he said automatically. But he was. He knew it. She knew it. The way his gaze stayed fixed, unguarded, as if his body had forgotten how to look away. Clara's jaw tightened. You are. Like I'm something strange you found in the dirt and don't know whether to bury or keep. The barn creaked as a breeze pushed through the open doors. Elias shifted his weight, boots scraping against the packed earth. He removed his hat, fingers worrying the brim, eyes dropping to the ground at last. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, broken only by the low shuffle of cattle outside and the distant creak of a windmill. Didn't mean nothing by it, he muttered. That doesn't make it feel any better, she said. She took a few steps farther inside, boots crunching softly on straw. The barn smelled of hay, leather, and sun-warmed wood, familiar, lived in. His space. She could feel it in the way everything here seemed shaped by his hands, his habits. It made her shoulders stiffen. Elias finally looked up again, slower this time, as if testing the air between them. She was smaller than he'd imagined when the letter came, the one from the lawyer, informing him that someone else had a claim to his land. Smaller, but not fragile. There was a steadiness in her stance that made something in his chest tighten. You're standin' where my father stood, he said. Clara's eyes flicked briefly around the barn. I didn't know him. No, Elias said, but he built this place with his own hands. Every post, every nail. She nodded once. So did mine. Just not this part. That hit harder than he expected. He swallowed, feeling the old familiar burn of resentment flare in his gut. 3 weeks ago, this woman had ridden up like a ghost from nowhere, carrying papers that said half the eastern ridge, his grazing land, his water source, belonged to her now. You can't just show up, he said, voice low, and take what's been mine my whole life. Her expression sharpened. I didn't take anything. I inherited it. Inherited from who? My father, she said. Thomas Mayfield. Elias snorted. Never heard of him. I'm not surprised, Clara replied. He didn't talk much about you either. That stung more than it should have. Elias straightened, shoulders squaring. Then why'd he have a deed to my land? She hesitated, and for the first time, something like uncertainty crossed her face. Because it wasn't always just yours. The air shifted. Elias stared at her again before he could stop himself. Care to explain that? He asked. Clara exhaled slowly, as if bracing herself. Your father and mine were partners. A long time ago. They bought the ridge together. Water rights, grazing, all of it. That's not true, Elias said at once. My father would have told me. Maybe, she said gently. Or maybe he didn't want to. Anger flared hot and sudden. You don't know a damn thing about my father. I know he signed the same papers mine did, she shot back. I know those papers sat in a box under my father's bed for 40 years. I know he never used them because he didn't want to fight. And I know now he's dead, and I'm all that's left to deal with it. Her voice wavered on the last word, just slightly. Elias caught it. The grief she tried so hard to keep buried showed itself for half a heartbeat, then vanished again behind her composure. The silence returned, heavier now. Elias rubbed his thumb along the edge of his hat, eyes drifting back to her face despite himself. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired that came from long days of work, but the deeper kind, the kind grief carved into a person slowly. That look again, she said quietly. He froze. What look? The one like you're trying to decide whether I belong here, she said. Or whether you want me gone. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth pressed against his ribs, awkward and unwelcome. I ain't used to strangers, he said finally. I'm not a stranger, Clara replied. Not really. Whether you like it or not, this place is tied to me now. He studied her again, more carefully this time. Her dress was plain, travel-worn. Her hands bore small cuts and calluses that told him she wasn't pretending to be tougher than she was. She wasn't here to play rancher, either. She meant to stay. That realization unsettled him. You could sell, he said. Take the money, go somewhere else, and leave what my father believed in. She asked. No. Elias let out a breath through his nose. You don't know how things work out here. Then you can tell me, she said. The simplicity of it caught him off guard. He stared again, but this time the look held less suspicion and more confusion. You don't scare easy, do you? He asked. Clara gave a faint, humorless smile. Not anymore. Outside, a cow lowed impatiently. Elias glanced toward the door, then back at her. If you're staying, he said, we're gonna have problems. I'm aware, she replied. But problems can be worked through. Silence can't. That earned her another long look. This one lingered. She lifted her chin. There. That again. Sorry, he said, though the word felt inadequate. She studied him now, really studied him. The lines around his eyes, the guarded set of his mouth, the weight he carried in his posture. She saw a man shaped by responsibility, by solitude, by years of answering only to himself. You look like someone who's been alone a long time, she said. He stiffened. You don't know me. No, she agreed. But I'm starting to. The barn felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls had drawn closer. Elias stepped back, creating space, then stopped. He didn't know why he cared what she thought, only that he did. Look, he said, voice rough. I don't want trouble. Neither do I. Then stop looking at me like you expect me to fight you. She raised an eyebrow. I'm not the one staring. That almost made him smile. Almost. He turned away, setting his hat down on a nearby beam, hands flexing as if restless. I'll have the lawyer come by again, he said. We'll figure this out proper. Clara nodded. That's all I want. As she turned to leave, he glanced back at her one more time. She paused in the doorway, sunlight framing her again, expression unreadable. She didn't tell him not to look this time. And Elias Crow realized, with a quiet unease settling in his chest, that no matter how hard he tried, he wasn't going to be able to stop. Autumn crept in without asking permission. The mornings grew sharp, frost silvering the grass along the fence lines, and the hills took on a burnished gold that caught the light just before dusk. Clara stayed. At first, Elias told himself it was temporary. She was settling her father's affairs, learning the land, figuring out what came next. People like her, educated, composed, clearly carrying another life behind her eyes, didn't stay on lonely ranches forever. They passed through, left marks, then moved on. But days turned into weeks, and she was still there. She moved into the small house on the eastern ridge, the one Elias had always used for storage. He watched from a distance as she scrubbed it clean, hauled water, fixed a loose shutter herself instead of asking for help. That alone unsettled him. Most folks who came out this far either complained or demanded assistance. Clara did neither. They spoke little at first. Practical words only. Fence lines, water access, grazing schedules. Their conversations were clipped, cautious, like two people circling the same fire, unsure how close they could stand without getting burned. Still, they kept ending up in the same places. At the troughs, at the windmill, at the narrow stretch of land where the ridge dipped and the cattle liked to wander. It was unavoidable, Elias told himself. Shared land meant shared work. One morning, he found her struggling with a stubborn gait, shoulders braced, jaw set in frustration. He watched for a moment before stepping in. Lift it before you swing, he said. She glanced back, surprise flickering across her face. I didn't hear you. Wasn't loud, he replied, reaching past her to demonstrate. His arm brushed hers, brief, accidental, and both of them froze. The gate swung open easily. Oh, she said, clearing her throat. That makes sense. He stepped back at once. Gate sags when it's cold. Everything sags when it's cold, she muttered. That did make him smile. This time, he didn't hide it. From then on, the work blurred together. He showed her how to read the clouds, how to tell when rain would hit the ridge before the valley. She listened, really listened, asking questions that showed she cared about getting it right, not just getting it done. She taught him, too, though she never framed it that way. She slowed him down, made him stop and think instead of pushing through on habit alone. When a calf went missing one afternoon, Elias was ready to ride hard and fast, panic tightening his chest. Clara stopped him with a hand on his sleeve. "Look at the ground," she said. "Not the horizon." They found the calf tangled in brush not a mile away. "Thank you," he said afterward, awkward and sincere. "You're welcome," she replied. Then, after a pause, "You don't have to do everything alone." He didn't answer that. He wasn't sure how. Evenings came earlier now. Sometimes they sat on opposite ends of the porch, the space between them wide but not empty, mugs warming their hands. Other times, they didn't sit at all, just stood, watching the sun sink behind the hills. It was during one of those evenings that she caught him looking again. "There," she said softly, not sharp like before. Just observant. That look. Elias didn't turn away this time. He leaned against the porch rail, eyes steady on her face. "I reckon I've been looking at the wrong things my whole life," he said. The words surprised him as much as they did her. "And now I don't know how to stop." Clara's breath caught, barely audible. She searched his face, as if weighing whether he meant what he said. "And what is it you think you're looking at?" she asked. He hesitated. "Someone who sees this place different than I do. Someone who fits here in ways I didn't expect." The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. The wind stirred her hair, and she tucked a strand behind her ear, gaze never leaving his. "Then don't stop," she said quietly. "Just don't pretend it means nothing." Something shifted then, not loudly, not all at once, but enough. Winter pressed down hard and fast. Snow dusted the ridge, then settled in earnest, turning the land quiet and unforgiving. Clara learned quickly how brutal the cold could be. Elias noticed how she wrapped her scarf tighter, how her hands reddened despite the gloves. One night, a storm rolled in fierce and sudden. The wind howled like it was trying to tear the hills apart. Elias didn't hesitate. He saddled his horse and rode to the eastern house, snow stinging his face. She opened the door before he could knock. "I was coming to check on you," he said. "I know," she replied. "I was watching for you." The fire burned low. The storm raged on. He stayed. They talked long into the night, about things that had nothing to do with land or cattle. About her father, kind and stubborn. About his mother, gone too soon. About loneliness, and the ways people learn to live with it. When the storm finally broke, something else had already changed. The decision didn't come with a proposal, or even a question spoken aloud. It came in small, undeniable truths. In the way Clara started keeping her things in Elias's house instead of the ridge. In the way he began introducing her as Clara, without explanation. In the way they moved around each other like a shared rhythm had always been there, just waiting. The town noticed before either of them did. A nod here, a smile there, a clerk raising an eyebrow when Clara asked about updating records. Elias stood beside her, solid and quiet, and signed where she pointed. When they walked back out into the cold, she slipped her arm through his without thinking. He looked down at her. "You sure about this?" She met his gaze. "I've never been more sure of anything." He still looked at her. Every morning, every night. Sometimes she caught him and smiled. Sometimes she leaned into it, letting his gaze rest on her like a promise. When she said his name now, it sounded like home. And without thunder, without spectacle, without either of them fully realizing when the moment arrived, the rancher had a wife.